There's a few spaces on the sofa at the front here as well. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Have we all got our seats? Shall we just try another microphone there a minute? How's that one? Let's give this a try. Okay, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. We are yet again another WordPress London meetup. But before we get started, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping. Can I just ask that your phones are on silent, just out of respect for the speakers, please? As far as we're aware, there are no planned fire alarms, so if there is an alarm go off, it's a genuine alarm. So we make our way back down the stairs. If you need access to the bathrooms, there are just down the corridor here on the right-hand side. If you need an accessible bathroom, there are accessible bathrooms downstairs. You'll have to take the lift. If you see Mara at the back there, he'll give you a key to give you access. You're welcome to have the food and drink, but we do ask please just clean up after yourselves but when you're finished. Wi-Fi is available for those of you that need it. We do have, in fact, both speakers this evening are using Wi-Fi. So if you're using Dropbox, Google Drive, maybe just pause those temporarily. The password is Yoti let me surf. So access to that. Just out of interest, who's here for the first time? Wow, welcome. Great to see so many new faces, and I hope you enjoy this evening. There's certainly going to be a bit of interactivity, a bit of feedback, so hopefully we'll get to understand why we're all here. Just before we get started, our hosts, or your hosts this evening, are myself, Dan Mabey. We got Diane over the back there. We have got Gary with the camera over the back there. If you don't want your photo to appear in any of our marketing, just let Gary know. He will ask to take a photo of you just so we can recognise you, but we won't publish those photos. And we've also got Paul just over here. So if you have any questions, feedback, want to understand anything about what we're doing, do come and have a chat with any one of us. We're always looking for feedback. We're always looking to understand how best to run this event for you, the community. Just before we get started, I want to say a big thanks to our sponsors. The power to simplify, build, secure and run your web apps and websites. Plesk, simplifying the lives of sysadmins and SMBs. Web hosting crafted with care. SiteGround, providing hosted services crafted for top speed and security with 24/7 expert support. I just want to say a special thank you to SiteGround. These guys have agreed just this week to sponsor WPLDN for a further 12 months. So please do head over to @SiteGround and send them a thank you. I think that probably deserves a round of applause for SiteGround, really. A digital experience platform built for growth, a WP Engine, press ahead. Have we got the WP Engine guys in the room tonight? No? Okay, again, similarly, WP Engine have agreed last month, I think it was, we were going to go ahead for another 12 months sponsorship of the event with these guys. So between all of these companies, it really ensures that we've got longevity, we've got stability of these events. So please do head over. I really appreciate saying thanks to these teams. The WordPress multilingual plugin, Weaglots, translate and display your website in different languages. I mentioned last month we translated or had the WPLDN.UK website translated through this plugin. It took it took less than 5 minutes to get the entire site translated. If you're looking for any kind of translation services, do recommend head over, take a look at the Weaglots.com, and if you want a discount code, use LondonWP20 for a 20% discount. And the new digital identity platform, Yoti, verify and identify your website users and let them log on using their biometrics. Not only are they sponsors, but of course they've given us our home this evening. So again, these guys, where's the Yoti team? We've got a few of them in here, I think. Please do give these, I think these guys need a round of applause, I think, for this home. And just want to say a quick thank you to our supporters. Blue 37, a strategic thinking team of digital experts with a creative edge, based out of London and Essex. Gamma Joe create technical WordPress solutions, including integrations with business critical systems. And Paul Smart, web design, marketing and consultancy for businesses seeking growth through digital. And Sotic, our digital sports agency, delivering high-profile, high-traffic sports sites on WordPress. Just to clear up the difference between our sponsors and our supporters. Sponsors help us financially. They financially contribute to WPLDN, allow us to have our lovely pizzas and drinks and so on. And our supporters contribute time to the event and enable the event to happen. So if you're interested in either becoming a sponsor or a supporter, we'd love to have a chat with you. On to tonight. Speakers. There's been a slight change of schedule, unfortunately. Unfortunately, due to circumstances outside of our control, Keith was unable to join us this evening. He sends his apologies, and we're actually looking to reschedule as soon as possible. Yeah, let's have a big oh for Keith. We've got David. David will be talking to us about alternative ways to build a WordPress-focused business. And Gary, over there clicking away on the camera, has very kindly stepped up to fill those huge shoes of Keith's. And he's going to be giving us an introduction to coding standards within our WordPress project. But before we go into the talks, just want to go into our community announcements. It's an opportunity, if you're aware of anything that's going on in and around the community, maybe you're aware of events, some training, maybe you're looking to hire at the moment, or maybe you're looking to work with other companies. It's an opportunity to just stick your hand up and just let us know this is going on. So has anybody got anything that they're aware of within the community?
Hello, everyone. Two community announcements, actually requests. I work on the WordPress core privacy team along with Heather, and we'd kindly like to ask everyone to, if you have availability, to join us on Mondays and Wednesdays on the WordPress Slack at 4 p.m. UK time, and just help us out. Look at some of the track tickets, help bounce ideas, double check that we're heading in the right direction in solving those. So any contribution, whether in ideas or in code, would be much appreciated. And the other one is there's going to be a contributor day in Glasgow on the 8th of September, which is next Saturday, also focusing around the core privacy element as well, led by Heather herself. So if you have the inclination and the availability, just make your way up to Glasgow and help her out.
Excellent, thank you very much. Anybody else aware of anything that's going on at all? Graham.
Hi. Yeah, sorry, I was waiting for other people to mention it, but since no one has, I will. WordCamp Manchester, since we're talking about going to Glasgow, is on the 26th and 27th. And, okay, fair enough. So everyone knows about that. Also, for those people who also feel adventurous, WordCamp Edinburgh. Euro.
As if by magic.
You're a swine. So that's my community announcement.
Thank you, Graham. Yeah, we've got WordCamp Manchester, as you mentioned, 27th to 28th of October. Yes, speaker applications close tomorrow for Manchester. So if you're considering speaking at a WordCamp, if you've never spoken at a WordCamp, do grab that opportunity. It's a great way to share knowledge. Every single person in this room has something right now to share with other people in this room. And that goes for WordCamps as well. So if you're considering speaking, if you've ever thought about it, do head over 28.manchester.wordcamp.org. You'll find the speaker application on there. You have 1 day left to get in. As Graham mentioned, also we've got the WordCamp Edinburgh. So that's the 17th to 18th of November. Have we got the conference day? We've got 1 day conference day, 1 day contributor day. The call for speakers and sponsors are due to be open soon for that one. Has anybody else got any other community announcements at all? No? Okay. Well, we've just covered that privacy quickly. Thank you very much. PHP 7.3 is knocking on our door. So for those of you that aren't aware, the beta 3 release of PHP 7.3 is actually due for release today. I believe the general release is 13th of December, so end of this year, which scarily isn't that far away. Talking about PHP London. So PHP London, similar to WordPress London, is a meetup focused on developers that use PHP. Meet on the first Thursday of every month, so that's going to be the 6th of September for the next event. Just got a very short video that I'm going to let play in the background here. Gutenberg. Who's not heard of Gutenberg? Got a few people? Okay, yeah, we've got a few people in the room who have not heard of Gutenberg. So Gutenberg, if you're not aware, is a new content editor that's due for release at some point this year. There's been some discussion. There was a pull request made 2 weeks ago by the technical lead of Gutenberg to explore the possibilities of introducing this focus mode, which is an interesting concept. The mode will highlight the current section, the current block that you're working on, and remove a number of the other elements that could be potentially distracting. As usual, the Gutenberg team are looking for feedback on this, looking for ideas as to whether this is, to understand whether this is something that would be beneficial to add to the project. So as you can see, as the user is moving through the blocks here, other elements are fading away. So you have that the idea of focus, hence the focus mode name. If you're not aware of the Gutenberg project, or if you have opinions, both good, bad, indifferent, do find ways to contribute. This is an opportunity to be part of this project. It's quite a way down the road now already, but it's not completed. And this is just phase 1 of the project. So I know there are a number of people who have voiced their opinions across the WP Slack community, for example. And that's amazing. The team are in there. Some of the members of the Gutenberg team that are actually leading this are in there and are listening to that feedback. Speaking of the WP Slack, wpslack.uk. Anybody not in the UK Slack community, the WP UK Slack community? So let's see. Okay, so we're probably about half the room there. If you head over to wpslack.uk, you drop your email address in, you'll get an invite via email to join the team. The Slack community is built up. There's about 900 members in there now. And there's all sorts of discussions going on. There's location-specific channels. There are other channels focused on dev, design, life, for example. There are lots of places, lots of things. There are lots of areas that you can chat about specific things. So there's a way to continue the discussions, the networking that you meet, and the connections that you meet at these types of events. So I highly recommend, if you're not in there already, head over to that site and drop your email address in. As always, going to shoehorn a couple of other events in. WP Essex is another meetup that I run, 20th of September, so the 3rd Thursday of every month. So if you're aware, I know we've got a couple of people here this evening who actually attend this event, but if you're aware of anybody that might want to go out that way, please do share the details. wpessex.org for more details. WP Suffolk, we'll go a little bit further out, so that's the 13th of September, second Thursday of every month. And WP Liverpool, the first Thursday of every month. So next one will be the 6th of September. And I do take a car up every single month. So if anybody fancies joining me on a bit of a road trip up there, it's a great city. Having a lot of fun up there, building that community at the moment. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to David Walmsley, who is going to be giving our a talk this evening called "Why Am I Going to Stop Selling WordPress Websites?" Dave's been using WordPress since 2007. He, in his own words, says for no good reason he blogs a little, makes YouTube videos, and co-hosts a weekly WordPress podcast called WP Builds. If you're in and around the Beaver Builder community, I think you'll certainly be very familiar with the name. So please do give David a big round of applause.
Well, thank you so much. Okay. I foolishly put my presentation on a website here, so I'm going to just go through this. So actually, Dan's covered most of my stuff. What the title is, I kind of regret the title a little bit. It sounds like a suicide note, where it's actually it's my journey to find the right kind of website building service for me. So I'm providing this to clients, and it's been a real journey. I never thought that I would be building client websites. A few years back, I kind of accidentally fell into it, and I've had to work my own way through it, just out of interest. Being introduced anyway. I think I'll ask something of you, if you don't mind. Let me just move. Dan, how do I do this? I'm doing the wheel. Circle. Oh. Anyway, actually, sorry, Dan. Could I just get a feel for who does the same as me? Who builds either directly or indirectly client websites for a living? Okay, well, that's quite a lot of people. So, okay, we're there. We need to move on. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about my history first. Hopefully, I'll get through this quickly so I can, open this up for other people. But it's been a journey for me. So, back in 2006, I started to learn some HTML and CSS and built a friend's business site. That got me into it. Both him and me were working full-time jobs, and we just got excited about the web, and I wanted to learn what made up the web, so we did that. I found WordPress in 2007, and for no good reason then I built a blog, which I didn't keep up, because I guess I was like most of my clients are now. I kind of understood SEO, and I understood a little bit about digital marketing, but it didn't kind of truly resonate. I didn't understand the long tail. I didn't understand how giving out content could build up relationships with other people. Later, in 2008, I realized a good use for WordPress. I was working in the civil service as a manager, and I worked remotely, and I had a team of remote workers, and they weren't connected to the internet. And I realized that suddenly, with a simple plugin way back there, I could just turn my blog and install it to this confined area that the staff could go into, and I could communicate with them. So really, that changed everything for me, and that's why I kind of got into building websites, because then daily I was using and adding content to WordPress, and I was trying to work out different ways of being able to display content and engage people in my team. So that's how it moved on a little bit. A few years later, then I got another challenge. I wanted to help another friend who'd got somebody to build this sideline business, e-commerce shop. It wasn't working for them. So I had a crack with WordPress to do that. Well, they didn't take it up in the end, and my wife said, well, I want to do it. Can you build it for me? So then I had a business as well, running WordPress as a sideline. I was using it in my job daily. And that was great. I was a civil servant for like 15 years, and then I decided to take a career break, just to have a break from it. And it was quite interesting. If I just step back a little bit, because this will tell you something about how I kind of viewed building client websites. When I did my intranet, I worked for the government, so me building a WooCommerce site on my own shared hosting was kind of frowned on, because you're not kind of supposed to do that stuff. So my approach to everything was it was better to ask for forgiveness than permission when it was working for the government. So that's how I did it. And for a couple of years, they didn't want me to have this. But eventually, they ended up, just before I left a break, they decided that they were going to introduce this nationwide. But what I needed to do then was to get involved in the project management of building this intranet for our nationwide division. And it taught me about the kind of budgets and where things. My job building this site took a weekend to do, and it worked. And it took maybe, I think if I were charging myself now, it would probably be less than £1,000 to build this. But this turned into a whole year project with their communications department working on it. They had full-time developers there. I'd seen them run our own division website before this, and they did everything the way that I understood websites should be built. So they did a whole section on aims. They had meetings about that. They would do something that was on the content architecture. There was card sorting exercises, all that kind of thing. Mood boarding would go in there with the branding, all kind of testing and launching, and all of that went on. And that's what I understood was building a website. They did that. I came back from my career break, and there was a the website that was really unusable in that time. So I kind of, yeah, it was one of those weird things. I thought, well, this is amazing, because I was learning all this stuff about this process that you should build a client website, and they were following it to the latter. But something I did on my own seemed to work better than what they spent all this time working on. And I thought, well, there's where all the budgets go. And I thought, that's definitely not something I want to do if I'm going to do this for a living. So when I went on my career break, thinking I might have had enough of being in the civil service, I thought, no, I'm probably not going to build websites, even though I built some for friends and family. The friends and family ones, though, were completely different. They weren't going to buy into this structure that I tried to enforce upon them. I literally had to sort of put in the content myself, and that was it, and put the site out. So that was my start. Anyway, I came back after my year out in the East. My wife is Indian born, so we spent a year out there living cheaply in the sunshine, which is actually how I spend all of my time now. So, and that is my life. So anyway, I came back to my job, and I literally just could not do it. I saw what they'd done with this project I'd worked on and did the management of early on, and decided I needed to move on. So I left my job, and I had no plan, and it was giving up a good pension to do this. But you know, sometimes you get into life where you know you just have to kind of move on. You can't go backwards. So that's what I did. And I thought we might do something else with it. We still had the little WooCommerce business still running. I thought I might be doing some travel blogging, because I learned more about digital marketing and, you know, how I could make that pay, perhaps. As it happened, a friend of mine who goes back to school, a 30-year-old friend of mine, rang me to ask me, just as I packed in my, do I know anything about WordPress? And I knew she'd been running, she wouldn't use this title, I don't think. She'd been running a web agency since 2000. And she really was in marketing, and she built people's sites back from 2000. She'd been running a business. In fact, she packs it in this next month. She's not going to do it after 18 years. But she asked me if she would do this, and she was working for this international games company at the time, and they wanted some help. And all that happened then, I did a few hours for her for a few £100. They then asked me to take a look at their main site for this international site. They were, the people she were working for was doing their website for the US market. And it was a WordPress install that hadn't been updated for, I think, 3 to 4 years. So you really couldn't do anything. It was breaking down. They had it on Windows, I think, was the server that they had, so they had difficulty. So I got my job, and that's how I accidentally fell into that. I actually ended up rebuilding this with Genesis and WooCommerce. Another job, because they had a big project. And these were people that would pay very easily, you know, £4,000 on these sort of sites, but quick sites to make, actually, with them. So that's how I started, and since then, can I roll down a bit? What is it about this mouse? Yeah, do it with that. Yeah, just move on there. So I completely lost one. Anyway, those jobs ran out, and I didn't know where to go. So I'd done these first jobs, and it was great. I'd moved to India, was living really cheaply. I'd done these first jobs. I was earning the same kind of money I was as a manager for the government, which I packed in. And then it stopped. But fortunately, my friend who'd been running all these businesses realized that I had these WordPress skills. So all of her previous sites that she'd done, which probably I'd imagine was a few hundred sites that she'd done, were starting to get to that point where they needed to be on a content management system for some of them, and also 2012, I think that was the basic change where everybody was moving towards having mobile responsive sites. So suddenly that was it, and that's where I've been really from that point about 5 years ago to the present day. My experiences of that period have been fairly good because I've never kind of needed to look for work, even without my friend's work and, you know, piggybacking off her work. I've been able to find work just because there's always somebody around asking, once they know you do this, you know, how much for a website? I'm thinking about doing a website. They always, friends and family, I could probably live off that, I believe. Never had financial difficulties just because we built that into it and we were living quite cheaply in the West. Had plenty of free time and autonomy, and I really work that came in. The downside, and probably you'll agree with me, the cons was that often work dragged on with clients, either at the beginning, and then when we started to sort of nail down what they really wanted, that they were gone and they would come back again 6 months later. We'd also get started on work, find clients would go absent for a long time. Is that generally something that most people suffer with? The income was irregular with it. Sometimes we get a lot of work coming in and then nothing. Few clients accepted my system, my way of working. I wanted to try and enforce the things that I'd seen. I'd heard people talk about on podcasts, the things that my government office used to do. No one was having any of that one at all with the work that we got. And there was always a sense, and that's still here now, that I could always do more. So people came to their websites, and I always felt I didn't have that time to explain that if they'd maybe done a little bit of keyword research, so they might have got a bit more traffic, understood how conversion works, they might have done a bit more on the design and we might convert more people, and other general digital marketing that we didn't get a chance to talk about. So that was my issue. Gosh. Yeah, do you want to just go to the green bit if you don't mind? Yeah, sorry. We've still got more. Yeah, so my dilemmas that I was having is that, well, the way that I try to work, and I think most of the peers or the people that I still see on Facebook groups that I'm involved in still generally work with a very sensible method of they get a brief, they make a proposal, they sign a contract to do a project. We never got that working, ever, because the brief bit used to send people off, they would disappear for a long time. It's probably something to do with the budgets, in part. So we never got our proposal. And we never really did any contracts, but we could get away with that on the basis that most of the work was low risk. It wasn't a lot of money that we were putting at stake on this because they were mostly low paid jobs, or they were broken up into smaller sections of work. But I actually came to think about it, and this is, I guess, why I thought a lot about this. I thought our contract's a good thing anyway for me, because if we're a service industry, it's not really going to work too well, at least for me, to have to point somebody to their contract, to some small print, if I want them to recommend work to me in the future. So even though I've seen a lot of people say that, and obviously if it's a big project you need contracts, but I often think with the work that I was doing, it's unnecessary. If I need to use a contract, something's gone wrong. Design process, complete disaster, never managed to get anybody. But I've changed my mind a lot on that. In any kind of system that I tried to set up, I tried to do it because other people did, because it seemed the professional way to do things. But the more I look at it, the more, most of the time, I'm trying to sort of ram square pegs into a round hole, you know, with trying to put people through my processes. So I went through the dilemma as well of, do I need better clients? So I was very much influenced by people like Troy Dean, Chris Lemmer, Curtis McHale, who talked a lot about qualifying clients and value pricing and getting a higher paid client. And this wasn't kind of working for me at all. I think mainly because if you're going to do that, you kind of need to do some proper networking and marketing of yourself. So I kind of skipped over all of that and thought, what's another way to do this? So, right, here we go again. Seriously. Ah, yay! Oh, thank you. So my conclusions was I didn't like doing much marketing. I mean, in my old job, actually, I trained people to knock on doors to do government surveys. So I kind of were familiar with kind of marketing myself, or, you know, getting over an idea. But I didn't kind of want to do that. I also didn't want to make budget my primary reason for working with someone. So often looking at the challenges, the people that really influenced me, you know, the Troy Deans, who would look at very much at, you know, how we can sort of value ourselves up a bit, which I think is really good work. But I thought they didn't resonate with me, my primary focus in life. I found it easy, as we did, to find clients. So I thought all we needed to do more, this is my thought process, was to try and accommodate more budgets rather than, if you like, force everybody to be at a certain level. We just changed the package that we offer. I had a bit of a hang-up as well. I don't know if you're part of the same kind of Facebook groups as me, but there's a lot of talk about the race to the bottom with doing our kind of client services. And often I feel uncomfortable with the way that a lot of clients are talked about, because there are other businesses like ours that need to be treated with respect, and I hear a lot of people talk about trying to get rid of certain clients that might not be good because they're low budget and they'll not be very good. And I had a and I thought maybe I'd be letting the side down if I went for lower price offerings. But I kind of thought about this and thought, well, you know, it's WordPress. I mean, democratizing publishing is what we do. It's about keeping things free. Anyone can go to Wix at any point. These days, with the page builders, and we've got things like Astra, who have Astra sites, a theme out there, click a button, suddenly you've got an instant site. So I thought, no, it's okay, I'm trying to scale people up from the bottom. The big thing for me was the fact that I needed some main income, and I decided this had to be the care plan. So now we were selling websites not as projects that could come and disappear. We were now trying to make something that was our main recurring income. So that's what we did, and that allowed me to move to something which was always a no-no from what I've heard, and what I thought was a bad idea. Rather than selling a project, I sold bookable time. So we sold days to make websites, and this allowed for some clear pricing and allowed for me to be a bit more transparent and allow other people to share what we do. And I decided also as well to be, which is again in contrast to what we're told to generally do, because clients aren't interested in this, I've tried to go for being very open about the software that we use and the stability of that software as well. So there's my conclusions, and this, I'm moving on now if I can get down. Okay, onboarding. So what we decided to do was to stop giving quotes and to sell build days with estimates. So what's built into that, if somebody comes to us with an idea, we don't really have to nail every detail down. I can tell them what I can do within 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, and they can book that. And we leave it still open for the client then. It's up to them. If they turn up and give their attention to it, we're going to get more done for them. So it takes that pressure off initially, and we can get started with something. We try to break every activity down into standalone bookable products. So if somebody needs a discovery time, we'll give them 4 hours. They can book that beforehand, and they can book more if they need it. They can book for some keyword research. They can book for some training. They can book for, I can't think what else. There's some other stuff that they could book for. And so definitely changed the approach there. We talked about the ongoing costs from the beginning. So I think when people were asking, and I think that's still the primary question, doesn't matter the budget, how much for this website, even if they give you some map of what they want. I've had that recently with a client that I think would have tens of thousands to spend, but it was still the same question, how much? So we talked and changed that dialogue into talking about the ongoing costs. So we don't answer it that way. We're now just saying, look, this is what it is for year one for building. This is what it's going to be for the rest of the year. We let people know about our care plan and hosting from the beginning. And this has kind of worked for us. At the moment, since we've done this, it's probably been about 16 clients that we've had in since we've changed our way of working. But everyone has gone on to the care and hosting plan, because we start with that from the beginning. So we just changed the dialogue. We've started talking about the fact that technology changes, that websites have a short lifespan potentially, so they know what they're going to be spending in the longer term. We try to talk about the concept of a minimal viable product. So instead of trying to sort of sell the value of how much return you might get on this big project that we're going to build with you, we're turning it the other way and saying, okay, try and keep your costs down. We'll work with you, and you can buy us for other days to keep adding to that once you've got visitors coming to your site and you know more about what you need, rather than spend a long time discussing what needs to be in that project before the launch. So that's pretty much what it is, and we're trying to build a bit of community around this as time goes on. That's the basic plan, and do some more live training. But that's me done. How have I done for timing? Oh, sorry. Then I can throw it open to any questions now. I whizzed through that just to has anybody got anything? Yes, please. Sorry, say again.
Why have you focused on the cost of it and not? Why have you focused on the cost of it and not past client success stories? So, like, when someone says, "How much does this site is this going to cost?"
Yes.
You can kind of fight back without answering that question at all by saying, what do you want to do with this? How big do you want to take it? Because if you've got a budget of 5k, yeah, you're not going to have a roaring success story unless it's luck.
Yeah, well, we've gone it a different way. I mean, we've asked as much as we can. I'm solving a problem from the fact that most of the clients we've had, whether they've had higher budgets or lower budgets, they've largely come with a very an open question where it's been hard and we need to nail down what it is that they want to achieve. I've never been able to do the thing. I'm very much influenced by people like Troy Dean, who talk from WP Elevation. I'm sure many people have heard of it, and he talks about going deep and going wide with conversations with a client. That's never worked for me. So largely we've tried to just get people on board with something. Book us a day, we'll start building the site. As long as we've got the basics about what they want in terms of functionality, I can at least guess, and we just start the project then. So it's a different approach, if you like. So what would you think is a better way?
So you've been working on this for years.
Yeah.
You've got customers. You've been working with those customers. You know the sort of performance, the kind of visitor traffic numbers, things that have worked, things that haven't worked. And you, instead of saying this is going to cost you this, you can still have a price for everything. But what you say is we worked on this for this client, and this worked really well, you know, their visitors doubled, or maybe it was a feature that you put in that was more UX focused, and that helped them to retain more customers or get more repeat business. Because what you're selling them is not a piece of technology. What they're buying is results. They're buying something to help them communicate their business, to help them sell their products. So really, if you go from a price perspective, you're painting yourself into a corner and building a brick wall around yourself.
Well, I'm not. I'm offering a service, my time, to start something. So taking the point about that was the problem, trying to sell some value about previous clients have done this. Well, we're really taking the work, rather than turning away work, which I used to do. We'd send some people, because it was going to be complex, to Shopify rather than do WooCommerce with them. I didn't have particularly one type of client. I'd skipped over doing that. So I didn't really have those examples. The best way really was to say, let's get started with this. I could use where I've got examples of where things have worked for people, and I would encourage that through the process. But getting that initial price and being able to have that conversation, which I think you can have with certain clients, and if you could do it, then hats off. But for me, this is really my story about the fact that I just couldn't do what other people could do by kind of giving value pricing. I've had to go a different way at it. But yeah, really good points.
Yeah, thank you, David. We do have time for a couple more questions if we have any at all.
Please.
You mentioned that you've moved from kind of project pricing across to more service plan pricing in latter years. Is the do you find are you locking people into like multi-year service plans, or have they got to get out of jail card?
What we've done, this is so nobody's locked into anything. That's the key thing about it. So if somebody comes to us and they want to build a website, whatever it is, however big that's going to be, we're going to have that conversation about our a care plan. We don't lock them in. They can leave after the first year of that. They do have to pay for the first year. But what we're largely doing now is a really low price on it because we're not putting any of our time into it. We are just doing the basics of backing it up, making sure, because we're using the same software largely all the time, so we're making sure that the software fixes are done. That's the only thing where it could take our time. The rest of it can be fairly much automated. But no, there's no lock-in. And the way that we have that conversation is we just say, look, these are the ongoing costs. This is with us, with our care plan. This is without us, where you buy the licenses for the software that we use, which is almost the same as our plan. So that leads people on price to go with it. And they can leave after a year. With people initially, we say, if they do want to go their own way and pay their own software licenses, we say, okay, you can self-manage this. Perhaps you can set up your hosting with a WordPress installs so we can start the first day. And no one's kind of called us out on that. Everybody just says, no, we'll go on your plan. We'll go on your hosting. As long as we've had that conversation, I think they've bought into the fact that we'll have their backs covered in the long-term future. That's what I'm aiming for with this.
Excellent, thank you. Do you have any more questions?
One of the issues that's going to for a lot of people, I think, in the future, who have built themes for people, WordPress themes for people and sites for people over the years, is who may no longer be our clients effectively, is like people who want to actually experiment with and potentially use Gutenberg, right? So if you're thinking about how Gutenberg is going to fit in with your themes that you maybe built some time ago, so websites that you built some time ago with WordPress, how's that conversation going to play out with your clients? I mean, I'm not just pressing you for specific answers there, but it's a question that's forming in my mind at the moment. So what have you thought about it, and what's your potential approach here? Because obviously, if you have built a theme, say 2 or 3 years ago, that then won't work with Gutenberg, how does that work as a conversation?
Well, I'm really, that's why I've changed a lot. I kind of skimmed over some of my bullet points there, but that is a big thought on mine. I mean, one approach is that clients aren't interested in the technology you use, so just give them that they're after the solution, which is a common argument for it. But even though I know that's true and they're not interested in what you use, I try and all the way through say that they are joining me in trusting this software that I trust, and it will last as long as it does. We're together as two businesses working together to try and deliver them results. So I've always tried to get this point over, not try and make them, I'm going to provide you with your business solution and take the responsibility for it. So that's a kind of conversation I try and have with people. So I'm not so fearful about that now, because even with the people now on our plans, I'm talking to them as things are developing in the online world. They're probably not reading it, but I'm putting it out there and letting them know. So yeah, I'm less fearful because I'm being quite transparent over everything we use. Yeah, great question.
Excellent, yeah, that is a great question. I think quite a difficult question for a lot of us to answer, actually. Excellent, thank you very much. David, just want to thank you very much for giving your time this evening, for giving a talk. And just a big round of applause, please, for David.
Thank you. I was so nervous.
Excellent. Okay, so I think actually next it might be me. Yes, it is. Sorry, I just need to grab a quick drink. So, yes, WPLDN. We're 10. We got a bit older. For those of you who don't know, WPLDN, the WordPress London Meetup, this is our 10th anniversary. And I just thought I'd run through a few statistics, a few facts and figures, if you like, about the meetup. So please forgive me if I indulge for a moment. 13th of August 2008, this post went up. And it reads, "This is the first informal gathering for the WordPress publishers, designers and developers." And this is how it all started. WordPress. So this is WordPress UK London, the first WordPress-focused event, WordPress-focused meetup in London. Since then, it's evolved a little bit. We are where are we? 8 hosts so far over the 10 years that this event has now been running. Starting off with Keith Devon, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us this evening. Keith was going to share his story, his history, his experiences with the community. So yes, all very sad that he couldn't be with us tonight. Keith went on to lead WordPress London through till 2014. Then in between 2012 and 2014, our very own Graham stepped up. Graham Armfield, sitting just here. Well, I have it on my notes here that Graham did contribute an awful lot of time in the background handling and managing video. So just want to say a big thank you. 2013, 2013 I came along and started supporting Keith. It was at the time, it was Keith, myself, Graham and Nari. Nari was supporting the event through 2014 and then she isn't, unfortunately. She's enjoying herself over in New Zealand. Nari went off to travel the world. Stay for WordPress London or travel the world? It's a hard choice. 2007, Gary came on board and has been supporting us ever since. Not sure if that was a woo. Throughout 2017, Annabelle came on board and supported us. Annabelle did an awful lot in the background. She instigated an awful lot of changes within the website. She took on board a lot of the administration of the website, creating a lot of the talks, the talk posts that you see on the site today. So a big thank you to Annabelle for her contribution. And then earlier this year, both Diane and Paul, where are they? Over there, at the back there, came on board. And I think we have team's not too bad now, I don't think. Got these 3 reprobates supporting us. So I just want to say a big thank you, a personal thank you to Gary, Diane and Paul for all your support. Because these events do take quite a bit of time. They do take quite a bit of organising and supporting. So it's incredible to have a team to be able to fall back on. Sponsors, we've had 14 of them over the years. We've got our lovely set of sponsors right now: SiteGround, WP Engine, Plesk, Biblio, Weglot and Yoti. SiteGround hosts our host partners. WP Engine provide hosting services. Plesk provide an admin panel. Biblio, you don't often hear them much because they sponsor our website. They provide related content services, and if you need related content on your site, highly recommend looking at these services. It's a really nice API and does all the heavy lifting on their servers. Similarly, Weglot provide translation services. As I mentioned at the start, they've translated our site for us. And Yoti, the incredible team here, these guys are doing amazing stuff with identity management and some really interesting stuff if you start integrating into your websites. But we've also had a few others that are no longer with us. 34SP, Beaver Builder, Campaign Monitor, eZone, Human Made, Make Do, Move, and Online Mastery. So a big thank you to all of our sponsors over the years to enable us to be able to have these events. If we take a little look back at some of our sponsors, this is what SiteGround looked like 10 years ago. And if we take a look at WP Engine, might need a little bit of UX work, a little bit of design work going on in there. We've had 6 main venues over the 10 years that we've been going. There's been a couple of sporadic nights. The latest 3 have been City University, Cloudflare and Yoti. City University, we were there for nearly 4 years in total. But we were also at, for those of you who can remember, the bakery. We've got a few hands here from the bakery, yep. What about the Rainmaker Loft? Yeah, got a few people remembering the Rainmaker. And what about Google Campus? Yes, yeah, quite a few there. Oh, Shoreditch Village Hall, yes. Yes, I can't remember the name of it. There was, yes. So yeah, there were a few others, but these were the regular venues that we spent some time in. The talks. Now, unfortunately, we've only got data for the last 4 years for this, which is a bit of a shame. But in the last 4 years, we've had 149 talks given. If we take the average of 2 speakers a night, we're looking at around a little under 300 talks in the life of WPLDN so far. Those talks have been given by, again, over the last 4 years, 104 speakers. And I think these speakers, there are lots of people in here that have given their time to come up here and speak and share their knowledge. I really think the speakers do deserve a round of applause, please. Again, if we take the average 2 speakers per event, we'll be looking at around 250 speakers that we've had up here so far. And if you, I want to put a little plug in here. If you are interested in speaking, do come and have a chat with any one of us, myself, Gary, Diane or Paul. We would love to hear from you. We're fully booked for the remainder of 2018, but we are booking in for 2019 already. So if you've got something you want to share, it's not like you've got to do it next week. You've got a bit of time to prepare. You lovely lot. There are 2,500, I think, 27 of us now since I last put this one up. Where are they all? That is a very good question, and it's part of a question I'll ask in a moment. Pizza. Who's enjoyed the pizza tonight? Yeah. 18,500 slices of pizza we've gone through in the last 10 years. Yes, those good old students had a few beers and pizzas on us. I really want to say a huge thank you to you, the community, for helping make WPLDN. WPLDN has gone on and allowed other things to happen, which I'll talk about in a moment. But without you, the community, we just simply wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be doing this right now. So what next? Well, this is where it gets a little bit interactive, because this is a question for you. These are community events. They are run by the community for the community. So we need to understand what it is you want. We have had lots of discussions recently in the WPLDN Facebook group, in the WP UK Slack team, and through Twitter. There have been numerous conversations about the future of WPLDN. What should it look like? What direction should we take with it? We're interested to know, do we want to split WPLDN into a multi-track event? Do we want to stick with a single-track event? Do we want to have a subset focused on users, for example, or developers or designers? These are questions that we're asking at the moment, and we really want to understand what it is you think. And I'll put that out to you right now. Do you have a preference? Do you prefer this single-track style talk where we all come together and we may be listening to content that might not be relevant to us? Or do we prefer having separate sessions? Anyone got any preferences? Option of both? Absolutely. It really is about understanding what the community wants. So if that is a genuine need from the community, so we want to create something where we can bring the whole community together, for example, like this. So we may have, for example, one talk that kicks off with all of us together like this, and then the second talk we break out. So we may have a user-focused talk, a design-focused talk, and a developer-focused talk. Again, these are things that we're looking to understand from you. Does anyone have any ideas, thoughts, or preferences? Lots of people. Graham.
Since you asked this the other day, I thought a bit more about it, and I really think a single track, because having briefly been part of the admin of this, like, I think the problems of having multiple tracks is that you're creating a lot of work for yourself, but also, like, how does that work with venues, right? So if this is a twin track WordPress London, where's the other lot going to be, right? So I don't think that that's going to work very well, really. I think from seeing the other comments that people have made, which If anyone objects to my summarisation, please let me know. But I've seen other comments on this, and people say, well, yeah, I don't understand that talk, but at least I got something from it. I know that there's this subject called whatever, right? But I didn't understand. It all went over my head, but at least I know that someone knows a lot about it, and if I want to, I can find out more about it. The other thing is that as a kind of a developer, like hearing people talking about like managing WordPress sites, hearing talk about who are actually WordPress users who are not developers, that's also very valuable as well, because if you're talking about people who are consuming effectively like things that as a developer that as long as people are aware that it's multidisciplinary, and if that's the right word, meetup group, as long as that's on the door, all right, then people should not be surprised to find stuff that they don't understand, or they might not have realised that it's relevant.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. Really valid points. And it is that do we come together to learn and push and stretch ourselves if the content that's being discussed isn't necessarily our area of expertise. It's a very strong argument for sticking with a single track. I think, is it Lewis? Did you have a...
I was just going to ask, because it's my first time, I don't really have a preference. How are you going to collect that data?
Collect which data?
About what people want to do?
So if we head to wpldn.uk/feedback, it's as if he's been planted. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. How do we understand that data? And if you head to wpldn.uk/feedback, it'll redirect you to a Google form for some feedback. The questions may not necessarily be specifically relevant to this discussion, but the feedback that we receive through it definitely does help shape what we do and how we provide this event. So you'll answer a maximum of 4 questions as you go through this. You can do it completely anonymous. We're not looking to do this to try and collect any personal data of any kind. It's about understanding how we can shape this event going forward. So yeah, thank you very much. The events that we've been running, so WPLDN have, as I mentioned earlier, have enabled us to do other things. And I think a few of you are aware of WPN Up now. Through the work that we've been doing with WPLDN, the work with the sponsors, it's enabled us to launch a charity that focuses on promoting and supporting positive mental health within the WordPress community. We got some big news on Friday just gone that we actually received charitable status for WPLDN. So this is now a registered UK charity, and we're pushing forward with an awful lot of work to focus on positive mental health within our community. So again, I just want to say a big thanks, because from what started out as a meetup, bring the community together, it's enabling us to actually go on to do a lot more within our community. We've launched a number of other events that are spreading what we are doing throughout the UK currently. We've got WP Essex, WP Suffolk and WP Liverpool. And these events are just the start. We're in talks at the moment with 4 more venues, 2 more in the UK and actually 2 more overseas. So we've got potentially our first one in Italy and our first one in Spain. So everything that we're doing here really has been born out of this event. So again, I just want to pass on a thanks, because it really is, it's enabling us to do some quite impactful work across our community. And there are other things in the pipeline, other ways of supporting the community. WordCamp London is something that we need to be discussing right now and bringing forward. And again, I just wanted to offer up this opportunity right now. WordCamp London 2019, we've had a discussion this afternoon, a smaller group of us that were involved previously, and some people that have never been involved. And I want to encourage that conversation, that discussion tonight with you, because the WordCamps are supported by the community, they're supported by volunteers. Just out of interest, is there anybody here that's not been to a WordCamp? Wow, excellent. So a WordCamp is they are the conference, the official conference. Yes, yeah, we've just had WordCamp Brighton last weekend. London was in April this year. So they are the official conferences for WordPress, supported by the global team. And as I say, they are events run by the community. London has about 600 attendees, so it's quite a big event to put on, and does require a team of volunteers. So if you're interested in supporting WordCamp London 2019, do come and have a chat with myself. There are other people in the room. If you are happy for anybody to come and talk to you about WordCamp London, do you want to stick your hand up and make yourself known if you're happy to be spoken to? Excellent, fantastic. So I think we've got a few people putting their hand up wanting to get involved. Fantastic. Okay. Cool. So just one last thing. WPLDN 10. 2 days ago, the WordPress Leeds meetup also celebrated their 10th birthday. They sent us a lovely little photo with a nice little wave from everybody. So I want to do the same thing in return. But do you know what they called us? Their little brother. Ooh. So, come on, let's get a photo together. If you're not prepared to get in the photo, do you want to maybe move out? Because this will be going on to Twitter, this one. And let's all get together. Let's get your hands waving, and let's show this WP Leeds what WP London's all about. Started now, so if I could ask you to make your way back to your seats, please. Could I ask that you make your way back to your seats, please? We're ready to get started. Thank you. We're running a bit short on time, please, ladies and gents. Okay, well, sorry to rush you there, but we are getting a little bit shorter on time this evening. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the remainder of the cake. I hope there isn't any left over. I'm now going to introduce you to Gary. Gary has very kindly stepped up at the very last minute to give this talk this evening. Gary is the lead dev and founder and lead dev of Gamajo. And tonight is going to be giving his talk introducing to an introduction to using coding standards within your WordPress project. So please give Gary a big round of applause.
It was one line of code. The bug had existed for over a year. The file was open source and had been publicly available since before then. The function with the bug was to verify server key exchanges, security at the operating system level that many applications relied on. There was even a conspiracy theory that the NSA was using the bug for its own needs. And yet all of this could have been avoided had coding standards been used. This is the code. It's written in C. It was discovered or was available since February 2014. Does anybody recognize it and know what the bug is? Go ahead. That's a good start. It's called the Apple go-to-fail bug. And it works basically the same as PHP. If you have a conditional that has no braces, then only the next line is bound to that condition. Works the next one too. However, the next one does not have any condition. So when this was executing, it would always hit this go-to-fail line, and therefore any other code after that would be skipped out. When you're dealing with kind of security at the operating system level, that's not what you want. It's fairly easy to fix. Their coding standards, and they follow the coding standards, had said put in some braces when you have conditionals, even single line conditionals. Then this red, hello, that's loud now. Wait now. Then this red line would have been caught as dead code. So the first go-to-fail would have executed. This red go-to-fail doesn't matter. It's not ideal, but it doesn't matter. There wouldn't have been a bug there. So our goal for this session is to introduce you to coding standards and how you can apply them within your WordPress work. How are we going to do that? We're going to look at what is a coding standard, what is the WordPress coding standard. We're going to start basics of the editor config file, introduce you to a tool called PHP Code Sniffer, PHPCS, the WordPress coding standards, WPCS, any other standards, or a couple of other standards, how we can use PHPCS, how we can use it to auto-fix our code, and how you can integrate that within your workflow. So the first one then, what is a coding standard? Has anybody here can give me a definition of what they think a coding standard is? Shout it out. Okay. So okay, so what he just said there was writing code basically in the same way. So the lines, I can see somebody else nodding over there, so the lines are in the same place, the braces and so on. Well, before we look at what is a coding standard, we really need to see what are coding conventions. There's a slight difference here. And we'll use our ever-faithful source of truth, Wikipedia. And it says, coding conventions are a set of guidelines for a specific programming language that recommend programming style, practices, and methods for each aspect of that language. So convention guidelines then, they could include indentation. Are we using spaces? Are we using tabs? Comments. What do single line comments look like? What do multi-line comments look like? Should they have a full stop at the end? What do dot blocks, how are dot block formed? Declarations. When we write a function or a class, how are we doing that? How did it look? Statements. When we do an assignment, do we align the equal signs? How do arrays are stated? Where's the white space? Do we include white space inside braces and parentheses? Do we include new lines or not? Naming conventions for your functions, your classes, your files. What are the best practices? And then how do we, or how much of the programming principles should we follow? So it could be inversion of control, dependency injection, defensive programming, loose coupling, cohesion, and so on. When you've come up with those conventions that you're following, or your company's following, or the community's following, and they've been designed to produce this high quality code and kind of formalized, then you can call it a standard. Now, one thing it's not a measure of code quality, not a direct measure. You can write code that meets some standards, but is really, really poor. Perhaps it's really slow performance. Perhaps it's really tricky to read, or just too much clever code that you can't understand what it's actually doing. So it's not a measure of code quality directly. So why might we want to follow a code standard? We alluded to earlier. We said consistency. Now, for yourself, it's about maintainability. 40 to 80% of lifetime cost of a piece of software goes to maintenance. So not necessarily the additional writing, but the maintaining it afterwards. So if you can write code in the same way kind of today that you did 6 months ago, and you will do in 6 months' time, it makes it easier to maintain. It could be for your colleagues. So if they're doing a code review, that's primarily a defect detection test. If they don't have to worry about what the code looks like, they can more easily identify where the real issues are. It could be for your industry peers. Hardly any software is maintained by the original author. So you want to attract contributors to your code. And one way to do that is to make your code readable. If it's really hard to read and understand, contributors won't be interested. They'll move on to another project. And for computers. So examples would be generating documentation. If you form your dot blocks in a certain way that follows a convention, then you can have software that will extract that documentation into somewhere separate. Another example would be if you have some placeholders. So for your synths or your next version, then that build step can replace those placeholders with whatever the next version is. So it automates that, so you don't have to manually update that individually. And of course, not introducing bugs like Apple did. This is a tweet from the start of this month. And now this developer is excellent at PHP. He really knows his stuff. He's a solid engineer. And he wrote this. When strings have special meaning, they should be replaced by value objects or at least constants. He's just spent an hour debugging a bug who turned out being caused by an occurrence of publish instead of publish. So whatever context that is in, within his company or so on, if the other developers had been following a coding convention or a coding standard that said that any magic strings, like publish, should be written as a class constant, that wouldn't have been an hour that he's wasted. So what are the WordPress coding standards? You'll find them in the core handbook. Now, these WordPress coding standards are not just for core. They are for plugins, they are for themes, they are for WP-CLI and any other WordPress-related projects. This is what it looks like for the PHP. On the left here, you can see that we've not only got PHP coding standards, we've got accessibility coding standards for CSS, HTML, JavaScript, and then it also goes on to documentation standards for PHP and for JavaScript as well. Now for the PHP, which is the one that I'm focusing on today, you can see that includes these topics up here. So when to use single and double line, how we should have our brace style or indentation, how should regular expressions be stated, the space usage, database queries, naming conventions, ternary operator, Yoda conditions, which you'll find in WordPress and generally not anywhere else, clever code, not to use the extract function, and so on. These are all documented for WordPress core, and the hope is that people within writing plugins and themes will also follow these. Now, just an aside, many of you might have the history that WordPress doesn't follow its own coding standards, and for a long while, you were correct. Back in December, there was the biggest patch that ever went in. It was 1,100 files. Sorry, 1,100 files that had changed. There was 90,000 violations that were fixed, errors and warnings. It didn't fix all of them. There were still 4,000, 5,000 still to fix. The diff file of it was 11 meg, which might not mean much, but if you kind of deal with diffs enough, I can see somebody grimacing here, then you know that that is a really large diff file. And it was the first time in 12 years that WordPress core had ever come remotely close to following its own documented standards. So let's go on to something practical. First one is something called a .editor config file. You'll find more about it at editorconfig.org. This is what this page looks like. And it's really summarized in the first two sentences. The edit config helps developers define and maintain a consistent coding style. We're not talking standard, we're talking a coding style between different editors and IDEs. It's made up of a format, a file format, and plugins for your text editor. So if you are using PHP Storm, if you're using Atom, if you're using Sublime Text, if you're using VS Code, most of them will have an extension that will help you to support editor config. This is the editor config file for WordPress core. It's a pretty good starting point for your plugins and themes as well. Most of it's fairly obvious. So it defines what character set we're going to use, what end-of-line characters, end-of-line format should be, the fact that we should insert a new line at the end of the file, that we want to trim trailing white space, that we want to use tabs for indentation. That's for all files, so wildcard. For YAML files, we say, well, we want to override that. We just want to use 2 spaces to indent it. And there's a couple of extra different bits down the bottom here. So the markdown, we don't trim the trailing white space because in markdown, 2 spaces at the end of a line is equivalent to a line break. So drop that one into your plugin or theme project, enable it within your editor, and you'll be a good way moving forwards on producing consistent code. Now, one of the main tools that we use for checking coding standards is called PHP Code Sniffer. It lives on GitHub. You can install it with Composer, or you can pull it down with Git, or if you're old school, you can use Pair, or as a PHP archive file, which is like a single executable zip file. This is what the repo looks like. You can see it's had 67 releases. It's actually slightly newer release since that one. And it's made up of the following kind of structure, in so much as it deals with rule sets. Now, rule sets are just XML files that reference sniffs, and sniffs are just PHP class files that contains the logic, and within that logic are the different checks. And that helps build up to check the kind of individual the individual code standards within your code. But it doesn't pass the PHP. PHP Code Sniffer will also check for JavaScript as well, but it doesn't execute the PHP. If you've done an assignment to a variable, it doesn't matter. It won't be able to read that value. All it's looking at is something called tokens. So we've got this example here. It's an empty function. When it runs it down as tokens, it splits it up like so. It says, okay, well, I recognize there's the function keyword, that's special, so it gets its special token. Then there's some white space. Then there's a string, which is a function name. And then it's the open parenthesis, it's the closed parenthesis. There's some more white space, there's a curly bracket, there's some white space with some new lines in it, and so on. So that's how granular it breaks it down. Now, PHPCS does have some built-in standards. The ones are pair, PSR1, PSR2, Zend, MySource, and Squiz. Squiz is the name of the company for the guy who wrote PHPCS. It has some configuration options. Here's a couple. First one is that you can show the sniff error code with an S flag. You can also show the progress. Otherwise, it will just kind of seem like nothing's happening. But if you show the progress, you'll see it kind of going ... You can define which standard you want to use. There's many more. That's just a few of them. Now, obviously, you don't want to be typing this into your command line every single time. And so it has something you can create a rule set that you put into your project, your plugin or theme project, and have this rule set. It's XML, but it should be fairly easy to follow. So we have the rule set name. It's generally going to match up to your plugin slug or your theme slug. A description, a file that says what we want to scan. In this case, it's just dot, so it's every single file. However, we have an exclude pattern. So it says don't include anything in the vendor directory. That's where if you do any composer dependencies, that's where it will put it. That's not going to be our code, so we don't want to scan that. We also then have it's not working. Nope. So we then have the two flags that we had earlier to show the sniff error code and the progress. Then we limit it to just having PHP files, the extensions. And then we define what rule we actually want to check, what standard we want to check. In this case, PSR2 is the example here. Now, you can save that in one of several different, or you can save it whatever name you want. But if you save it under certain names, then PHPCS will find it and use it automatically. This is the list of files that it will find, or that it looks for. Now, the trick here is ideally within the commit, within your version control, you'll save your configuration file as .dist files, .dist names. If you then put the other two into version control, into your git ignore, then somebody can make use of these and have these files locally and override what you kind of distributed. So they can have their own local config that won't then get pushed to your repo as well. Now, of course, as well as having built, there's also some user land standards as well. There's Code Igniter, Drupal, Laravel, Magento. There's one called Neutron, which you might not have heard of, PHP compatibility, Symfony 2, and of course, WordPress. WordPress coding standards, what we abbreviate to WPCS. This is where it lives on GitHub. It's existed since April 2009. The first, well, sorry, not the first release. 0 release was last month, July 2018. And the 1.1 release is due out on Monday. So this project is under very much active development. You can go and take a look. Save you the trouble. Here's what it looks like. Okay, so 2,000 commits, very active. Yeah. Now, the actual WordPress coding standards includes several rule sets. The first one is WordPress. That is the complete rule set, the complete standard, includes all the sniffs that we include within the repo. It then has a core rule set, and that is the main rule set for, obviously, WordPress core. There's a separate rule set for docs, and then there's WordPress extra. Now, that includes WordPress core, but it also includes some extra things, some extra best practices that we think you should be following. Here's our PHPCS config file again. It's pretty much the same. So file, exclude pattern. In this case, we're just saying, I want to include WordPress extra. I want to include WordPress docs. Now, for WordPress coding standards, it actually has a few extra bits. It has some, in this case, public properties. So in this case here, we can, it has a public property called minimum supported WP version. By default, it's set to two major branches less than what the current version is. So in this case, 4.7. But if you, let's say you were using a function that was deprecated in 4.6, because you're saying, well, you're only supporting down to 4.7, it will report that deprecated function as a violation that you should go along and fix. So you can manually configure that depending on how up-to-date you are with your code. If you, what are we doing here? So yeah, so if you, one of the coding standards for WordPress is that classes should be named class dash and then the name of the file. There's something called PSR4, which is a different naming standard for class files, and a lot of people prefer that because it allows them to auto-load the files considerably easier. And so you can say, you know what, WordPress, I love you, but I don't love you that much. I'd rather name the files how I want to name them for the classes. So you can make use of this auto-loading, which makes your code considerably cleaner. So you can turn off this strict class file names, and the fact it's not hyphenated, you can exclude that as well. It goes further. So within WordPress, if you have your functions in the global namespace, ideally you should be prefixing them so that the code you write does not clash with the code somebody else has written that might also have otherwise the same exact kind of function name. So you can define what your global prefixes will be. In this case, it's generally going to be the plugin slug or your theme slug. You can go even further. When you internationalize your strings so that you make it available to be localized into other languages, you use a text domain within internationalization functions. You can specify what that text domain should be, and then PHPCS, along with WordPress coding standards, sniffs, will check that for you. Make sure you've not missed it out. Make sure you've not put a typo in it. Now, one you might also find very useful as a separate standard is PHP compatibility WP. Again, lives on GitHub. And this is a wrapper for a slightly more generalized PHP compatibility standard. The only difference is it includes some backfill for what, some allowances for what WordPress already includes as backfills to support older versions of PHP. Again, here's our rule set with PHP compatibility. Pretty much the same. This is our rule that we say we want to use. And then the trick here is to use this for test version. In this case, I can say, well, I want 7.1 up to, and it's just a dash there. So 7.1 upwards, that's the level of PHP that I want to support. So if I start using something that was removed in 7.0, it will report that as a violation. So you can define what versions of PHP you support, and it will check it for you. Now, let's see what your PHP knowledge is like. Can anyone tell me, just shout out, what versions of PHP this would work with or not work with? Louder. 5.4 I heard. Any other options? Okay, so it's namespaces. Namespaces were only added in PHP 5.3. So yes, it would work with PHP 5.4. It would also work with 5.3. If you were trying to use this with PHP 5.2, it wouldn't work. Okay, this one. 5.4 I'm getting. Yep, I'll go with that. Okay, so the short array syntax was only added in PHP 5.4. I can hear some mumbling down here. Yep, 7. Why? 7. Yep, why? That was when they started trying to introduce kind of enforcing strict typing. Okay, so scalar return types. So in this case, the fact that I said this is going to return an int, an integer, was only added in 7.0. Excellent. Okay. This one's a bit trickier. What version would this work with or not work with? Nope. Okay. So only variables could be used with the empty function prior to PHP 5.5. It's very rare that you'd probably come up with something like this, but if you were, it would only work. It wouldn't work in 5.4. It'd throw a fatal error. So PHP compatibility would recognize this for you. And the last one. I'll read this one out. Variables bound to a closure via the use construct cannot use the same name as any superglobals, this, or any parameter since PHP 7.1. Okay, so if you'd written this code or anything like it, it would support up to 7.0, great. When 7.1 came out, you find your plugin or theme would be broken. So PHP compatibility will help recognize situations like this. Now, there's a Neutron PHP standard. It's by Automatic. One of their teams is called Neutron. It's aimed at those who are predominantly or who are only writing code for PHP 7 or above. It's going to be split up to work even better with WPCS. It kind of works there at the moment, but it's going to be split up. No more on that, but you can go and have a look on there on GitHub. And we actually want to write out how do we use PHPCS. Okay, so you'll see something in a minute, and it relates to WP Suffolk, but that's fine. Just imagine it says WP London. Okay, so this little code snippet here, very, very similar, the same as we had before, but there's one violation. Can anybody spot it? Yep. So there's an extra space just between the function name and the first parenthesis. That shouldn't be there. So it might be a bit tricky to see. Okay, but this is how we run PHPCS. Okay, so these slides are available. They're available now, actually. So if you can't see it, don't worry. But PHPCS, we call that. We see what the standard is for WordPress core. We want to show the sniffs, and it says, "Yep, this is the file we use." It found one error, and it identified it as being a space between the function name and the open parenthesis is prohibited, i.e. that space shouldn't have been there. And it also has a little X here, and it says PHP CBF can fix that one marked sniff violation automatically. Which brings us on to auto-fixing the code. As we said, it's indicated by a little X within the reports. Not all violations can be fixed. There are some things that you still need a developer to actually decide what is the right solution for this. But many, especially white space related, as we've just seen, can be fixed. And obviously that's a great time saver. Why? It's because then you can quickly address all those kind of code style violations, and that way it reduces or increases the signal to noise within those reports, so you can focus on what the security issues, the security violations being reported are. So this is how an example of running the code fixer. So I pass it a file name, I pass it a standard, it fixes it for me, and then we just check it again just to make sure it's fixed. Yeah, no more violations in that file. I haven't had to go through and fix them all manually. Now, PHPCS does have several different types of reports. The example that we saw where it said kind of the little X next to it, that would be a full one, which is the default. The other two are source and summary. One tells you how many violations are in each file. The other one tells you how many different types of violations you have within whatever you've scanned. But another fun one is git blame, along with SVN blame and Mercury blame, so that you can work out who within your team has committed the most violations and get them to fix them. So then we're coming on to the workflow. How can we make use of this? We found out there's tools available. How can we use this? Well, the first one is integration with your IDE or your editor. So in this particular case, it mentions WP Suffolk, but underlined it, and then when I hover over it, it tells me exactly what the issue is, and it puts a little kind of color bit in the gutter. So even before I started looking at command line tools and running it, I can see within my code editor what the issue is and go and fix it straight away. For a little bit more complex, you might turn to composer scripts. So in my plugin boilerplate, or in my plugin boilerplate, I like to use PHP 7.0 or above. It might be 7.1. But for the main plugin file, I still want to support PHP 5.2. So that if anybody does activate my plugin and they're not running PHP 7, then I've got the chance to kind of throw a notice because I'm still supporting PHP 5.2 and say, hey, you know what? This PHP isn't new enough. I'm going to deactivate. And we can still make use of that within PHPCS. So in my composer script, I can't find where I am. There we go. I run PHPCS here, and then I run it again, and it says, right, I want to check my main plugin file. I want to show the sniff. I want to show the progress. I'm using PHP compatibility, and at the runtime, I want to set a test version of 5.2. So for the majority of it, PHP-CS runs fine. For this one file, I check it specifically again with PHP 5.2. Not quite there yet. Something more you can do, you spend all this time fixing your violations. Your code passes PHP-CS beautifully. What you don't want then to do is to introduce new violations and then have to check it manually again. So you can, if you're using Git or other version control, you can use a pre-commit hook. And that's basically a little script that you can say, hey, run PHP-CS. If it passes, great, let the commit through. If it doesn't pass PHP-CS, then reject the commit. And it will tell you, even before you committed locally, no, I'm rejecting it, you've got to go and fix that first. So it just stops new violations being introduced. It's quite simple to set up, but there's plenty of tutorials. But if you need a bit of extra help, there's a plugin called PHP Composter. It's a composer plugin that you can use to help set that up. Going even more, you've got your plugin or your theme. It's on the repo. You've got contributors wanting to write code for it, bug fixes, and extra features. What you can use is a continuous integration setup, and there's free ones. CI or Circle CI or Scrutinize and so on. There's lots. CodeShip, I think, is another one. And it will run PHP-CS as part of any new commit or pull request. Okay? So if I see something and I want to go and do a bug fix, I'll fork it, I'll commit that and do it as a pull request. But if I've introduced any new violations, this will flag it up even before you've had a chance to go and look at my pull request. So the conclusion then. What I wanted to give you was a broad overview of what coding standards are, what they mean, or what they look like within WordPress. Some tools, simple ways to kind of move ahead with them. So edit a config file, PHP-CS, and how you can integrate them within your daily workflow. Thank you very much. If you've got any time for questions, I'll take them. Thank you.
Excellent, Gary. Thank you very much. We do have time for some questions. Do we have any at all? Right at the back there.
Hello? Yeah. Once the Gutenberg comes into core, how would you be able to check coding standard on that?
Yep, so PHP-CS does support JavaScript, but it's not the best thing for it. There are other tools, one called ESLint, which WordPress core has support for, which Gutenberg is using. And what they're trying to do, because it's such a big project, it's almost as though Gutenberg project is dictating what the JavaScript coding standards should be, rather than Gutenberg following what the existing JavaScript coding standards are. So we're trying to kind of fix that so it's not the cart leading the horse. But yes, there's separate JavaScript coding standards and tools for that as well. And they generally will follow that. And if you go and have a look on the Gutenberg repo, I'm pretty sure that you'll see probably, for instance, a Travis setup or Travis configuration file that will run ESLint against their code.
Excellent, thank you. Any more questions?
Hi, yeah, so I come more from a Python background, and you've got the benevolent dictator who dictates coding standards. Has there ever been an attempt from the PHP creator or the main, the core developers to come with a standard for the whole of the PHP community to follow?
So not from PHP as in the creator of PHP. But there's a group that has created itself called PHP Fig. It's the Framework Interoperability Group. And they created a couple of standards, one called PSR1 and one called PSR2. And the way they decide on should we use tabs, should we use spaces, should we put our braces in a certain place were by looking at kind of 20-odd projects within the PHP wider community, not necessarily, or it wasn't WordPress, and basically taking the most favourable. So in that particular case, PSR2 will say, well, when you use indentation, you should use spaces. And so a lot of new PHP projects will start following that. They are extending that further because it doesn't cover things like kind of traits and generators and things that return type declarations, for instance, i.e. all the PHP 7 stuff that didn't exist when these PSR 1 and 2 was created, and are creating PSR 12. Now WordPress has such a long history that generally it won't go back and start using spaces for indentation, for instance. WordPress community and WordPress core people generally prefer things spaced out so that you get the readability. Now what the WPCS, the sniffs are, we're trying to make them code style agnostic. So that way you'd be able to use PSR2 for your code style, but you could still use WordPress coding standards to identify when are you using the extract function when you shouldn't be. Are you creating something that's going to perform poorly? Has your internationalization kind of not got a text domain, for instance? So you'd be able to use that, but you'd still be able to use PSR2 if that's what people prefer. And I know there are people who prefer using what the wider PHP community does rather than just kind of WordPress.
Excellent, thank you very much. We've got time for one more, I think. Yeah.
Hiya. When doing checking, do you check on the entire code base or only on the files changed in the specific commit or pull request?
So generally, PHPCS will run across the whole project. But there is a package from XWP, who's an agency in the WordPress community, which allows you within your continuous integration setup, so for Travis, to say, you know what, look at what the diff is, so what has been changed for this commit or for this pull request, and only run PHPCS against those files. So by default, no, but you can have an extra package to set up, so it's more efficient that way. Yes.
Excellent. Well, Gary, thank you very much. Please give Gary a big round of applause. So Gary stepped in there at the last minute, so extra special thank you for doing that. Okay, I'm just going to quickly switch over laptops. Okay, so thank you all very much for making it this evening. I just want to say a big thank you to David and to Gary for both giving their time this evening to come and talk to us. We meet the last Thursday of every month, so our next event will be on the 27th of September. We're back here in a month's time. So please do help spread the word. If you're aware of anybody that may be interested in this event, if you have colleagues, friends, associates that aren't here tonight, so you think actually, you know what, they may have benefited from this, or there may be some networking potential, please do help spread the word. We've had a good turnout here tonight, and we'd like to maintain and build upon this and keep growing this as a community. Please do come and have a chat with any one of us, myself, Gary, Diane or Paul, regarding any feedback that you have at all. If you find that you head over to wpldn.uk/feedback and the questions don't necessarily give you the opportunity to provide the feedback that you want to, please do head over to the contact page, drop us an email, because we do want to ensure that what we're doing is right for you as a community. For those of you that can, we're going to head over to the Cross Keys for a social. So that's just around the corner. I think we head out the door, turn right again, and we're pretty there. It's a fully accessible building. So if you can join us, it would be great to carry on some of the conversations that we've been having here this evening. I want to say a big thank you to our sponsors, WP Engine, Weglot, Plesk and Yoti. I want to say an extra special thank you to Yoti for hosting us this evening. Other than that, thank you everybody for making tonight, and see you next month.